Welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen, and enjoy my stories every day. The aroma of exotic spices wafted through our home, a reminder of my wife Alara's culinary prowess. An international chef, Alara had a talent for bringing the flavors of the world into our kitchen. It was one of the many things that had drawn me to her. But lately, her passion for cooking had intertwined with a secrecy I couldn't understand. That evening, as I stepped into the kitchen, a new dish caught my eye, a platter of intricately spiced noodles, unlike anything Alara had ever made for us before. "New recipe?" I asked, lifting a forkful to my mouth. The flavors were a vibrant tapestry of tang and spice. She flashed a smile, her eyes flickering with something I couldn't quite place. "Yes, a friend taught me. He's from Thailand, and he's an amazing cook," she said, her voice light, but with a hint of something else, a whisper of guilt, perhaps. "A friend?" I probed, feeling a twinge in my chest. "Just someone from the culinary world. You know how it is," she replied, turning back to her cooking. But I didn't know how it was, not really. Something in her tone, the way she avoided my gaze, set off alarms in my mind. The next day, I made a decision to come home early, driven by a gnawing suspicion I couldn't shake off. As I unlocked the front door the following afternoon, the sound of muted moans reached my ears. They grew louder as I approached the kitchen. My heart pounded in my ears, drowning out the rational voice that told me to turn back. Pushing the door open, the scene before me unfolded like a nightmare. Flour dusted the air, coating every surface in ghostly white. There, amidst the chaos, was Alara and a man, naked except for a chef's hat. My world shattered in an instant. "Alara." My voice was a mix of horror and disbelief. She turned, her eyes wide with shock. "Mark. This isn't. Save it." I snapped, cutting her off as I observed the man scrambling to cover himself with a dish towel. The room spun around me, each breath sharper than the last. I stormed out of the kitchen, the image of betrayal burning behind my eyelids. That night, after a long, torturous evening of silence and shattered illusions, I made my decision. Revenge would be my closure. Divorce, my liberation. I would reclaim my dignity, even if it meant breaking the bond that once held us together. As I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the plan began to take shape in my mind. Alara's world would crumble just as she had crumbled mine. But first, I needed evidence, undeniable proof of her betrayal that would stand up in court. Tomorrow, I thought, the game begins. Tomorrow, I fight back. And so, under the veil of night, I plotted the downfall of my unfaithful wife, each plan a step towards reclaiming my broken fate. Morning light crept through the curtains as I awoke with a purpose. Today wasn't just another day, it was the day I'd start gathering the proof of Alara's betrayal. The house was silent, save for the distant chirping of birds, a stark contrast to the storm raging in my heart. I started by installing hidden cameras in the kitchen and living room, the primary battlegrounds of her culinary escapades. If anything untoward happened again, I'd have it recorded. As I set the devices up, each click of the camera felt like a step toward reclaiming my life. Later that morning, while Alara was showering, I sneaked a look at her phone. Unlocking it was easy, her password was our anniversary date, a painful irony. My fingers trembled as I scrolled through her messages. There it was, a string of texts with someone named Nico, replete with winky faces and innuendos about cooking up something hot. I screenshot everything, my heart sinking with each snap. The evidence piled up, a digital testimony of her duplicity. "Planning anything special today?" I asked over breakfast, testing the waters. "Just a normal day. Maybe try a new recipe," she replied, her voice too casual. "Sounds interesting. Make sure to enjoy yourself," I said, the double entendre hanging between us like a sharp knife. After she left for the market, I went to a friend's house to discuss my findings. Dave, a lawyer, listened intently as I laid out everything. "This is good, Mark. But you need more concrete evidence," Dave advised, his tone serious. "Gather more, and make sure it's irrefutable." I nodded, a plan forming in my mind. I was thinking about following her today. See where she really goes. Do it. But be careful. If you get caught, it could backfire. Armed with determination, I tailed her car from a safe distance. She drove straight to the market, but instead of shopping, she met Nico. They laughed, touched subtly, a charade of normalcy that stung more than her outright lies. I took photos, documenting each moment, each betrayal. Suddenly, they headed towards his car. My pulse quickened. I followed them to a quaint, secluded restaurant, the kind perfect for secret meetings. Inside, I watched from a distance, capturing their intimate lunch on my phone. As they left, Nico leaned in for a kiss, which Alara reciprocated without hesitation. That image, more than any other, sealed her fate in my heart. Driving home, I felt a mix of victory and agony. I had what I needed, but at what cost? My marriage, once the bedrock of my happiness, was now a sinking ship, torpedoed by the very person who had vowed to be my co-captain. That evening, as Alara returned home with a smile, pretending nothing had happened, I knew the next steps would be the hardest I'd ever take. But I was ready. Ready to confront her, ready to end this charade, ready to fight for my dignity. As I lay in wait for the perfect moment to strike, the evidence tucked away safely, I knew the real battle was just beginning. The evening air hung heavy with tension as Alara busied herself in the kitchen, her back to me. I watched her every move, the way her hands skillfully maneuvered through the ingredients, a stark contrast to the deceit that had maneuvered through our marriage. "Alara," I began, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside. "Who's Nico?" She stiffened, a clear indication I'd struck a nerve. Slowly, she turned to face me, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and surprise. "Mark, No," I cut her off, holding up the photos I'd taken that afternoon. "I know about Nico. I want to know why." Her face crumpled, the facade of innocence shattering under the weight of proof. It just happened," she stammered, her voice a whisper of its usual confidence. "Just happened?" My tone was incredulous. "Affairs don't just happen, Alara. You made a choice." "I was lonely," she confessed, tears starting to form in her eyes. "You're always working, and Nico, he understood me." "That's no excuse for betrayal," I retorted sharply, my heart hardening against her tears. "I know, and I'm so sorry, Mark. I never meant to hurt you." Her voice broke, her entire demeanor one of regret. "But sorry wasn't enough. Not this time. I want a divorce," I declared, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. Alara gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Please, Mark, can we talk about this? Can we go to counseling?" I shook my head, my resolve firm. "I can't trust you anymore, Alara. It's over." The room fell silent, the only sound the quiet sobs that shook her body. I watched her, my mind racing with the next steps. Legal separation, splitting of assets, the unavoidable gossip. It was a mess, a painful, complicated mess, but necessary. As she begged for another chance, her pleas falling on deaf ears, I prepared myself for the upcoming legal battles. The evidence I had gathered would make the divorce proceedings lean in my favor, but no amount of favorable outcomes could repair the broken trust. "Alara, I'll be staying at a hotel tonight. I need some space," I said, my voice cold, detached. "Mark, please," her voice cracked, a mix of desperation and sorrow. "I'll send someone for my things tomorrow. Goodbye, Alara." Turning away, I didn't look back, her cries echoing in the hallway as I closed the door behind me. Outside, the night air felt sharper, clearer. As I drove to the hotel, my mind replayed the confrontation, each word a hammer to my already fractured soul. But beneath the layers of pain and betrayal, there was a sense of relief. The truth was out, and I was free from the web of lies. As I lay in the hotel bed, staring at the impersonal ceiling, I knew the hardest part was yet to come. The legal battles, the emotional healing, the rebuilding of a life shattered by infidelity. But I was ready to face it, armed with truth and a resolve to never let betrayal define my future. The fight for my dignity had just begun, and I was determined to win, no matter the cost. The early morning sun filtered through the blinds of my hotel room, casting long shadows that seemed as fragmented as my thoughts. Today would mark the end of everything, my marriage to Alara, and the charade of lies that it had become. My plan for revenge was meticulous, fueled by the cold fire of betrayal. I had arranged a meeting under the guise of discussing our separation amicably, details of the divorce, division of assets. But the real agenda was far from amicable. When I arrived at the cafe, Alara was already there, a mix of hope and nervousness in her eyes. She stood to greet me, but I motioned for her to sit back down, my demeanor icy. "Mark, Let's cut to the chase, Alara," I interrupted, my voice calm but carrying an edge sharp enough to slice through the thick tension. "I know more than you think." Confusion flickered across her face. "What do you mean?" "Not only have you been unfaithful, but I've also discovered your little financial secrets," I revealed, watching her closely. Her face paled. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Really?" I slid a folder across the table. Inside were detailed accounts of her siphoning money from our joint accounts, money she funneled into a secret account for Nico and her culinary escapades. "Care to explain this?" Alara's face crumbled as she flipped through the documents. "Mark, I can explain," she stammered, her composure breaking. "No need. I've heard enough." I stood, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I've already filed for divorce and reported your theft to the authorities." "You wouldn't," she gasped, her eyes wide with panic. "I would, and I have." I leaned in, my voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "You destroyed us, Alara. And now, I'm going to make sure you lose everything." The cafe was buzzing around us, oblivious to the personal earthquake happening at our table. Alara's face was a mask of shock, her eyes darting around as if looking for an escape. "Please, Mark, don't do this." "I'll do anything," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "It's too late for anything," I replied coldly. "Goodbye, Alara." With that, I turned and left, not once looking back at the ruins of what had once been my life. In the weeks that followed, the divorce proceedings were expedited due to the evidence of her infidelity and financial deceit. Alara's culinary career took a hit when the news of her personal and professional misconduct spread through the industry. As for Nico, he vanished from the city once he realized the consequences of their actions were spiraling. Neither of them could sustain the weight of their deceit, and both faced their professional and personal demise. Months later, I found myself in a new city, starting over. The pain of betrayal lingered, but it was now a dull ache rather than the sharp stabs I'd felt before. I had survived, more resilient and guarded, but with a new appreciation for the truth, however harsh it might be. In a twist of poetic justice, Alara attempted to reach out, her messages filled with apologies and pleas for forgiveness. I never responded. The chapter of my life that included her was closed, sealed by her own betrayal. And as I looked out over the skyline of my new beginning, I realized some dishes, like revenge, are indeed best served cold.